about this, guys. Please don't get lazy with this stuff. All right. So with that being said, please click on the video sheet. All right, we're going to start with our review for the Civil War. Again, you would have seen this last year. You'll remember some parts. That's okay. I'm going to mute myself, preview question 1 and preview question 2, and we'll go over it shortly.
Hundreds of miles to the south, a small plant is creating another economic boom. Cotton. But this one will eventually tear the nation apart. Cotton is native to tropical regions, making the southern states of the U.S. a perfect breeding ground. The valued part is the soft fiber which grows tightly around the shrub's sticky seeds. There are 30 species worldwide. Growing it's no problem. But processing the fiber before it can be spun into cloth is labor-intensive, especially separating the seeds. For years, it could only be done by hand. 1 pound took an entire day. A simple patent filed on March 4th, 1794, changes all that. The cotton gin. It automates the process and deeply divides the country.
The cotton gin transformed not only America, but the world. The concept of mass production using a machine just exploded everywhere.
One man can now process 50 times more cotton. Output skyrockets all over the South. In 1830, America is producing half the world's cotton. By 1850, it's nearly 3/4. Called white gold, cotton supports a new lavish lifestyle in the South. By 1850, there are more millionaires per capita in Natchez, Mississippi than anywhere else on Earth. The richest man in town owns 40,000 acres, nearly 3 times the size of Manhattan Island. The South is thriving on the backs of humans owning other humans. It's called slavery. The North is implicated in the South's success. The industrial North is profiting from Southern cotton, but turns a blind eye to slavery. Many of them slave owners themselves, the founding fathers assumed slavery would soon disappear. Slavery has already been abolished for 20 years in Britain and is outlawed across most of Europe. But with the cotton explosion...
Okay, so let's go over number 1 quickly, and I'm also going to refresh the page. So number 1 is, why does the North turn a blind eye to slavery? Listen, even though they don't have slaves in their own land, the cotton gets sent from the South, gets sent to the North, and then they start manufacturing in their factories to make cloth and fabric and clothes. All right, so you put, because they were getting rich off cotton too, as well, except they were producing in factories. All right, I'm going to refresh this quick because this thing like won't go away. I want the middle part to go away.
Slavery becomes critical to the Southern economy.
Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. I want to fix this. That's okay, Rena. Okay. Going to 2.
Wall Street takes off textiles boomtown. Population explodes from 200 in 1820 to nearly 20,000 in just 15 years. More than a third of the town works in the mills. 85% are single women between 15 and 25. Harriet Robinson is 10. When her father dies, she goes to work at the mill.
I can see myself now, racing down the alley, between the spinning frames, and carrying in front of me a bobbin box, bigger than I was.
Women earn money for the first time. Harriet's wages help support her family. Industrialization is changing everyone's lives.
Oh, the mill girls make good use of their money. The mortgage is lifted from the homestead, the farmhouse is painted. Mill girls help maintain widowed mothers and drunken or invalid fathers. We were paid $2 a week. Oh, how proud I was when it came to my turn to stand upon the bobbin box.
When women really joined the workforce in the cotton mills and the thread factories, I think it gave women an opportunity to get out, be serious about being breadwinners, and it changed the whole fabric of America.
The mills also revolutionize how Americans dress. Mass production of cheap cotton fabrics spawns America's clothing industry. Previously, most families made their own clothes. Now people buy ready-to-wear. Eastern fashions replace buckskin. By 1850, men's clothing is the largest manufacturing industry in New York City.
For me, what makes me proud of...
Okay, yeah, so you guys are already getting there. That number two, how does the growth of industry lead to an increase in rights of women? Women got paid enough money to live on their own and support a family. It doesn't seem like $2 a month is a lot. $2 a day was a lot, but it was. All right, that was plenty of money to get you through everything you needed back then with the price of everything. It was perfectly a good amount of money. Were they going to be rich? No, but it was still plenty of money to help support a family at that time. I'd probably compare it to making, $100, $150 a day. All right, it's enough money to really, make everything okay. So even though cotton and slavery kind of led to these horrible things for African Americans, it kind of indirectly leads to somewhat good things for women, because women were needed because there were so many open jobs in the factories in the 1830s, 1840s. The problem is with some of the factories, you'll see a lot of kids also worked in the factories, which will become an issue we'll talk about more in Unit 4. But this was a little bit of an issue, just to kind of give you a heads up. All right. Now, we never really spent enough time, I've mentioned this, we never spent enough time on working with the actual life of slaves. Okay. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to look at a slave auction. All right. So we'll see a little bit of horror from the slave auction. I think you guys will have a good sense of kind of how this goes. Yeah, Liz Mel, $66. Yeah, that sounds about right. Maybe I overestimated. But yeah, back then there wasn't as high cost, so that should be good. All right. So take a look at 3. Why do the plantation owners purchasing slaves look at all body parts of the slave before they buy? So when they purchase the slaves, okay, this is called a slave auction. This will be rather sad. All right, maybe some of you remember from last year.
1841, New Orleans, ground zero for the slave trade.
How much?
It's auction day, the day every slave fears the most. In the first half of the 19th century, over 500,000 slaves are sold at auction. It's a business worth $2 billion to the Southern economy. Since the cotton boom, the value of slaves has skyrocketed. Now men cost $1,000, women $800, children $500. Solomon Northrop, an educated free man from the North, was kidnapped into slavery.
He would make us hold up our heads, walk us briskly back and forth, while customers would feel our hands and arms and bodies. Make us open up our mouths and show our teeth. precisely as a jockey examines a horse which he is about to barter for or purchase. Scars upon a slave's back were considered evidence of a rebellious or unruly spirit and hurt his sale.
90% of all African Americans are slaves. 4 million men, women, and children.
We had based this country on everyone having inalienable rights to freedom and equality, and yet we created a system of abject persecution.
Slaves are fattened for auction, like livestock. Dark-skinned men are bought for the fields, light-skinned women for the house. Traders lie about their ages, even dye a slave's gray hairs.
For the plantation owners, it was like just going to your local supermarket to get sugar or flour. They had become so desensitized to the humanity of the slave that they did not see them as human beings.
Buyers demand the most fertile slaves for breeding. The most expensive are light-skinned teenage virgins. Rape is common. Eliza's from Estate Plantation. She's being sold with her 2 children, Emily and Randall. In Louisiana, it's illegal for children under 11 to be taken from their parents.
Boy, come over here.
It happens all the time.
You know, 140 years is not a really long time in the context of history. So it's hard for me to believe that blacks didn't have any rights here. They weren't treated as human beings. They were treated like animals, essentially.
Sir, please. All right, you go, we go.
Over half the sales at auction will tear a family apart.
If you've ever been 8, to think of being separated from your mother and your father and sold and you'll never see them again. The horror of that, the poignancy of all of that, and yet that's the kind of thing that happened across the South up until the end of slavery.
Okay, my final offer. $1,000 for that man. Well, $900 for that man. The woman there, $700.
Please, buy my child. Sir!
I have seen mothers kissing for the last time the faces of their dead offspring, but never have I seen such an exhibition of intense grief as when Eliza was parted from her child.
Come on, now, you go.
Yeah, so taking a look at number 3, why do the plantation owners? Okay, so basically they want to purchase. I mean, again, they're just, it is completely a horrible situation, but they are looking at the slaves here to make sure that they're purchasing a slave for a good price. All right, so to make sure that they are purchasing a fit, healthy, and behaved slave. Right? They talked about if there was a lot of scars on the slave's back, that means there's someone who has misbehaved a lot. If there's someone who had gray hairs, they're a little bit older. If they had rashes or whatever, they just like you would go to the supermarket and just like look at a piece of meat, okay, or look at a piece of food and you check everything to make sure it's okay, and then you buy it. It is extremely horrible situation. You know, I can never really do it disservice, you know, kind of just by teaching about it, but hopefully you see through the videos. This is one slave auction. I mean, families are being torn apart. This is why slavery was such a horrible, horrible thing, one of the many reasons. And you can imagine over time how a lot of Northerners and a lot of people against slavery, a lot of abolitionists, started to speak out against this. All right. Number 4, why does Frederick Douglass have a better chance of being mistaken as a free man more than most slaves? So there's this kind of crazy story that Frederick Douglass writes about in his autobiography of how he gets his freedom. He's going to try and sneakily get out of the South, taking a train. This isn't the Underground Railroad, by actually taking a train to his freedom. This is prior to the fugitive slave law, so see how he gets his freedom. It's a little bit of a crazy story, and then we'll also answer number 4. Yeah, well, yeah, if you work on a plantation and you need workers, you need to hire workers, you need to hire people, you're obviously not going to hire a person, you're going to hire a slave. So it's kind of thought up like that. Yeah, it's pretty bad stuff.
Three miles outside Baltimore heading north, a slave on the run. The risk of capture is high. At most, 1,000 a year are successful. Ears cut off, Achilles tendons slashed, branding, all are common punishments if caught. Frederick Douglass has failed twice, but won't let that stop him. Men like Douglass are the South's worst nightmare. He has a better chance than most of passing as a free man. Unlike 80% of slaves, he can read and write.
Even in the 21st century, we're only 3 or 4 generations away from people that not only could not get paid for their labor, it was against the law for them to read and write, it was against the law for them to marry, it was against the law for them to name their children after themselves.
Ladies and gentlemen, please. Way to go.
Black Americans must carry documents proving they're free or who they belong to. Frederick Douglass has papers borrowed from a friend. They won't hold up to careful examination.
My whole future depended on the decision of this conductor. This moment of time was one of the most anxious I ever experienced. Had he looked closely at the paper, he could not have failed to discover that it called for a very different looking person from myself.
Frederick Douglass makes it to New York City and freedom, and becomes a leading figure in the anti-slavery movement. He'll write a best-selling autobiography. He'll meet and debate with Lincoln in the White House. At a time when slaves are barely regarded as people, he will become an icon, a celebrity, the best-known African-American in America.
Okay, yeah, he is. So probably a great-grandma or great-great-grandparent would have been a slave. That's, we're going back a long way now, over 160 years, so it's a few generations. And yes, Milagros, there's a story in his autobiography. He talks about the chicken that saves his life, where basically he was trying to escape. He gave his identification. It clearly wasn't him. But when the conductor kind of took it, he got flustered because there was chickens starting to run around the train. So he gave it back to him and dealt with the chickens and never came back to check his freedom papers. Because every free person, I don't think I mentioned this, should have freedom papers. So if you come out and a slave catcher or someone tries to say, okay, are you a slave? You show them your freedom papers, you should be free. So the chicken got loose, and Frederick Douglass ended up making it to the North and his freedom. And you saw what great things he did. He became one of the best-known African-Americans ever. He goes to Congress, just a really amazing figure, and was kind of from this moment. But why does Frederick Douglass have a better chance of being mistaken as a free man? He can read and write, which is something not many African-American slaves could do at the time. So if you were free, you had a better chance of doing it. So he definitely had the notion that he was free. All right. Then we're going to get into number 5 and 6. I think 5 you can answer. Yeah, Lizmel, he was respected in Congress, especially by his Northerners. I'm sure some people in the South didn't like him so much, but he was very well respected. And you'll see he actually has a lot of conversations with Lincoln throughout the Civil War. 5 and 6. Yeah, you should probably be able to answer 5 already, but listen up for number 6. We're going to look at Harriet Tubman now. You're going to see great lady, awesome lady, does amazing things for our country, but not the nicest lady. You'll see why in this video here. And just write in the chat, have you guys seen this video last year? I thought Demasi showed it to you, but maybe not.
The best hope for escaped slaves is the legendary Underground Railroad, the tireless efforts of Harriet Tubman. An escaped slave herself, she risks her life returning south again and again to guide others to freedom. A masterful escape artist, Tubman will do anything to avoid capture, even keeping babies quiet with opium.
Harriet Tubman is the Moses of our people. She was a wanted woman. She was a hated woman, reviled by the white South. Just imagine, you have gotten out of slavery, you've escaped, and yet you come back. You have the courage and the care about other people to come back into a hell.
The South puts a $40,000 reward on her head, but nothing stops her.
Come on, yo. Come on. Move. Or die.
Tubman is one of America's first civil rights activists. In the same month she dies, Rosa Parks is born. Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman threaten everything the South stands for.
Tens of thousands of slave owners had to deal with, for the first time, the fact that these people are going to rebel. She was far more effective as the symbol that they feared than the few hundred that she saved.
Nearly 60,000 slaves will escape, up to a $50 million loss to their owners. But it symbolizes much more.
Okay, so you saw Harriet Tubman, you know, again, she kept babies quiet. She would sometimes drug them so they didn't cry. Basically, if anyone tried to not listen to her, she would threaten them with a gun because she knew if they got caught, there was a good chance she got caught. So if she's doing them this favor, you're going to listen to every single word she said. So number 5, the Underground Railroad. No, it wasn't actually underground. There were secret paths that people walked through. And then 6, I actually didn't hear the number. It was 60,000, I think. Is that correct? 60,000 people were freed through the Underground Railroad. Okay, so that's my memory. Pretty good. Okay. Take a look at number 7. Again, this is review. Not much of a multiple choice question, but definitely a thing you could see on a DBQ. Questions 7 and 8. 60,000 was the number, Rena. All right, so take a look at 7. How did the fugitive slave law change all African-American lives? We should know this already, but this is a good visual. You're going to see a African-American tailor from the North. He's free. He has no issue. He's never been a slave in his life. But watch how the fugitive slave law kind of comes in and changes everything when the fugitive slave law gets passed.
Now the South has a fight on its hands, and they're prepared to do whatever it takes to preserve their way of life. The fight for the soul of a nation is just getting started. Midway through the 19th century, America is entering the modern world. In 20 years, there'll be Levi's jeans, chewing gum, and hot dogs. But the nation is split, being torn apart at the seams, dividing North and South.
Slavery became not simply a political issue, not simply an economic issue, but a moral issue as well. It became the issue that defined North and South in the 1850s.
September 1850. The fugitive slave law brings the brutality of Southern slavery to the North. Now, no African American is safe, anywhere.
Gentlemen, you've made a mistake. There's a place of business. I'm a tailor to my clients. I'm a free man. I'm not a slave, gentlemen.
Fugitive slave law meant that if you were a slave and you managed to escape to the north, your master could come and get you, and you had no recourse. Not only that, if you were a free Negro, they still could sell you down the river.
The search for runaway slaves become a witch hunt. Any African American can be condemned simply with an accusation. Even a free man has no right to a trial by jury. Federal magistrates get $10 to rule them slaves, $5 to set them free. Ordinary people are outraged by the new law. Abolitionist newspapers and literature spread like wildfire. Published in 1852, Uncle Tom's Cabin becomes the best-selling book of the century after the Bible. A passionate anti-slavery novel written by Harriet Beecher Stowe, an unknown housewife from Connecticut. It mainly appeals to women who are becoming politicized for the first time. Slavery is the burning issue of the day. As America expands across the continent, North and South face off over each new territory. Will it be slave-owning or free?
Okay, so we're taking a look at number, I think it's 7 right now, the Fugitive Slave Law. It's a little bit long, but anyone that, any slaves that escape their masters need to be returned back to their masters. You saw in this particular situation a free tailor being taken into slavery who was never a slave. This would happen constantly. You saw the white family there, like, very taken aback. They were looking at their kids, the kids there. They didn't know what to do. All right, so this started to upset a lot of Northerners because this law was now not only affecting the South, it was affecting them. All right, and they were dealing with slavery almost on their front doorstep, so to speak. All right, and also, if a person knows of a runaway slaves and doesn't say anything, then they could be thrown in jail or fined as well. Okay, Uncle Tom's Cabin, okay, is a book for number 8. It's the name of the book. This is review, and it's about the life of a slave. Okay, before we get into 9, it's going to talk a little bit about how our country starts to divide. So remember, as our country expands after Manifest Destiny, we get the question, are we going to be a free state or a slave state? So we're going to have a little bit of video before we get eventually to question 9. So you can preview question 9, but let's go through this part first.
The Northerners began to see that, wait a minute, they're not going to keep slavery just in the South. They want to take slavery west and to turn the country into a slave country.
Americans from all over the country are flooding into the new territories on the frontier. Each becomes a battleground. Will it be slave-owning or free? It comes to a head in Kansas. A peaceful protest turns violent. Emotions run high. Towns are terrorized. Stores robbed. Homesteads burned. North and South are polarized. Neither side will back down. One man will stop at nothing to abolish slavery. John Brown, a folk hero in the North, a terrorist to the South. He thinks he's fighting a holy war. He believes himself to be God's chosen instrument. He will murder for his cause.
John Brown is one of those controversial figures about whom almost anything you can say is true. He's a terrorist in our modern terms. He's a revolutionary.
The divide between North and South is an open wound. Kansas bleeds for 2 years. More than 200 dead. America is on the road to war. Slavery is tearing the nation apart.
America is built on a number of distinct fault lines. One, of course, was slavery and freedom. That was a fault line that had to be addressed.
In the South, slavery is a way of life, even for non-slave owners. Anti-slavery forces in the North threaten their right to decide their fate.
There is still, in some areas of America, a great pride in being Southern and holding true to the original Southern attitude. I think our clinging to the idea that slavery is a right and just way of life, you know, it is a dark spot in our history.
Anger in the South grows more passionate every day. The North claims the moral high ground. But they are getting rich off cotton too.
Pretty much everybody agreed that a crisis was developing. Not everyone knew that the crisis would include in the end a civil war, but everyone understood that a showdown between the slave South and the free North was about to occur.
John Brown wants to light the fuse. October 1859. Passionate in his hatred of slavery, Brown prepares to take the fight into the heart of the South. His plan, to capture the federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry, Virginia. The biggest collection of weapons in the South. 20,000 rifles, muskets, and pistols, worth almost $7 million today. He wants to arm Southern slaves and lead a slave rebellion. He's fighting alongside his 5 sons, all of them willing to die for their cause. The arsenal is poorly defended. Breaking in is a pushover. But his raid is based on local slaves rising up and joining the fight. He needs a small army to carry off so many weapons. Without slave reinforcements, it's a suicide mission. Word gets out, and local townsfolk attack the arsenal. Not a single slave joins Brown and his men. They are trapped and fighting for their lives.
I want to free all Negroes in the state. I have possession of the United States Armory. And if the citizens interfere with me, I must only burn the town and have blood.
Okay, so number 9, how does John Brown light the fuse? He wants to raid an arsenal in Harper's Ferry, Virginia. Steal the weapons, and then give those weapons to slaves to kill their master. So I know it's a lot there, but you guys can copy and paste. It's not hard. This is a huge, extremely controversial thing because now John Brown's actively using violence to basically try and abolish and get rid of slavery. Again, we know he's one of the more controversial figures. He was absolutely despised by the South. Even some people in the North were like not crazy about how he went about trying to abolish slavery. And this was a pretty radical way. Now, the whole plan is predicated on slaves basically escaping their masters and meeting him the night of the raid, but not one single slave shows up. So him and his sons, because it's John Brown and his sons, are pretty much all trapped. Okay, and it's just a matter of time until the military gets brought in. And the military has a leader from Virginia. This is the first time you're going to meet him. His name's Robert E. Lee. He was a famous Mexican-American war general who is now going to be a big Civil War general. So you're going to meet him for the first time because he's going to have to be brought in to squash John Brown's rebellion. 10 is an opinion question, so take a look at it, and you're going to write your own answer for it. But see how this all transpires.
Radical abolitionist John Brown is trying to inspire a slave revolt. No slaves have joined him, and now he's trapped. At dawn, the U.S. Marines arrive. They storm the arsenal under the command of Colonel Robert E. Lee. Brown won't go down without a fight. But the soldiers overwhelm them. The fight against slavery has only just begun. But John Brown's crusade is over. His sons are dead. His trial captivates the country. Charged as a criminal, he puts the institution of slavery on trial. America is fatally divided. Brown is convicted of treason and sentenced to death. A terrorist in the South, a martyr in the North. He's executed on December 2nd, 1859. As the country prepares to elect a new president in 1860, many wonder if the nation can survive.
I, John Brown, am now quite certain that the crimes of this guilty land will never be purged away, but with blood.
Okay, so number 10, you're just answering on your own. Okay, it's an opinion question. Do you think he is a good person, a bad person, and kind of explain why? It's a little bit of a complicated question. Do you think he's more of a hero or a villain? And kind of explain why. Yeah, you guys are really interested in how they look. Listen, they don't have the 20/20 aging things and moisturizers and face. I mean, people looked older. Okay, they didn't have the vitamins. They didn't have health. Okay, the same type of medicine. All right, so people looked a little bit older. So someone at 50 probably looks someone that probably looks like in his 70s now. So that's not too much of a crazy thing. We have a lot more better medication and better vitamins. Anicia brought up an interesting point. I just want to make sense to it. You know, she said black people are being lynched and beaten every day. So how is this extreme? You know, both of these situations are extreme. You know, hopefully you realize, you know, for a particular person living in the South, they didn't look at a slave as their equal. So they treated him not as their equal, clearly, which is a horrible thing. But at the same point, someone coming out and trying to give weapons to someone and to try and kill the plantation owners, probably not great. All right, they're both extreme and kind of bad in their own way. And what is more bad or less bad is open to subjectivity, meaning it's open to opinion. But there's no doubt that both situations are a little bit bad. Yeah, anti-hero is good. All right, that's not a bad option. All right, but you're going to answer 10 on your own. We're now getting to number 11. Why is Abraham Lincoln? We're going to meet him for the first time. Why is he committed the enemy by the southern states? All right, so we're getting to the end here.
Chicago, May 18th, 1860. A backwoods congressman comes out of nowhere to grab the new Republican Party's nomination for president. Abe Lincoln's only claim to fame, he's lost 2 elections to the Senate. Personally, Lincoln hates slavery, but he's desperate to hold the country together.
What I admire about Abraham Lincoln is that he had his beliefs, and he stuck to his beliefs at a time when it wasn't popular to do so, especially when it was black, white, and very cut and dry. He stuck to his beliefs.
November 6th, 1860, Election Day. The stakes couldn't be higher. Abraham Lincoln will be elected president of a country hurtling towards war. The South rebels, convinced he'll abolish slavery. They threaten to leave the Union. The battle lines are drawn. The North is behind him. For the South, Lincoln is the enemy. An editorial in an Atlanta paper.
Let the consequences be what they may. Whether the Potomac is crimsoned in human gore, and Pennsylvania Avenue is paved 10 fathoms with mangled bodies, the South will never submit to such humiliation and degradation as the inauguration of Abraham Lincoln.
The South knew that Lincoln was going to win, and it was just a matter of time, tick, 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 before secession occurred.
The South wants no part of a union with Lincoln in the White House. But as he prepares to take office, the president-elect is still determined to avoid a civil war.
Lincoln was not happy about slavery. He did not see that as congruent to all men are created equal. And he had given a speech before he ever became president on why that was so important to him. And I think that was coming to a head. And when he got elected, that was the final straw for the South.
December 20th, 1860, South Carolina secedes from the Union. The 10 other slave states soon followed. Lincoln's victory makes war inevitable. He's prepared to fight to preserve the Union and won't have to wait long. In February 1861, a few weeks before his inauguration, the Confederate States of America are born.
Lincoln's principal objective was to save the Union, and then we'll deal with slavery. But before too long, he had to both save the Union and deal with slavery.
Abraham Lincoln receives his first death threats before ever taking office. He'll save everyone, keeping a file in his desk labeled assassination. On the journey to Washington, he'll wear a disguise just to be safe. He'll do anything to avoid war, except allow slavery to expand.
It is Lincoln who explains the case for freedom and says, I'm not going to attack slavery where it is, but I'm not going to let it expand.
At his inauguration, Abraham Lincoln reluctantly pledges that states with slaves will be allowed to keep them. But it's too little, too late. A virtual state of war already exists. The South mobilizes an army of 800,000 men against a Union army of 2.5 million.
Okay, so a couple of things. I'll get to Emmanuel's question in a second. I'm going to post 11, 12, and 13 here. So why is Abraham Lincoln considered enemy by the Southern states? Southerners believe he was going to abolish slavery. Number 12, secede means to break apart and become their own country. And then 13, we'll learn about this more. His actual goals were to preserve the Union, in other words, bring the country back together and stop the spread of slavery. He was not interested in ending slavery at any means. He just wanted to preserve the Union. So Emmanuel asks, didn't black people teach the colonists to do a bunch of things, which is possible? Then they turn around and make them slaves of gratitude. Just remember, when the original slaves came to the country, they were sold from Africa by African tribes. So you had the African tribal leaders from Africa, black people. Obviously, they would sell these slaves who were slaves in Africa, sell them out to the United States. When they came to the United States, they were already a slave. So it wasn't much of a situation where they were free and then they were black, then they were forced to become slaves. If you were black and free, you pretty much stayed free. All right, if you were born free, you stayed free. So there was, just keep that kind of in mind a little bit. After the fugitive slave law, it kind of comes into place. Yeah, it's an opinion question, so you have to answer it on your own. All right, I'm going to play the last 50 seconds of this video. This is a preview for what the Civil War will kind of look like. Tomorrow I will see you. We will have another very similar assignment that goes into some more details, a review from the antebellum period. Once the video ends, you can go, turn in the assignment, and have a great day.
Five weeks after Abraham Lincoln takes office, first shots are fired in the war between the states. It will spark a brutal and bloody civil war, the deadliest in American history. In the next 4 years, more lives will be lost than in all America's other wars put together.
Okay, 87 is coming in now.
I'm here. Mr. Panio?
Hi, Sebastian.
Hey, Miss S.
Hi, baby. What's up?
Good.
I think you are not supposed to be in this class right now. I think it's only AD7. Sebastian? Sebastian, I think it's only AD7. You're in the wrong class, my love.
Oh, thanks.
Okay.
All right, guys. You guys copy down the focus question and write down the two presidents, Andrew Johnson, Ulysses Grant, as the class kind of comes in. I'm going to run and just grab a drink quick, so I'll be right back. But we'll start around 12 when some more people get in here.
Panio, I'm here.
Okay, Miss S.
All right. AD7, just so you guys know, your narratives are due tonight. No hand ifs about it. All right? Send us what you got. A 1, a 2 is better than a 0. Okay? Remember that. Even a 1 or 2 is better than a 0, my loves. So don't cheat yourself out of a grade. All right? I mean, disappointment is worse than a grade. I will be disappointed if you don't, give me something good. But a grade is also good to have. Take down your notes. No, Jadalyn, nobody ever gets a 0. I've never given a kid a 0 in my life unless they haven't done work. Ever in my life. The lowest grade I've ever given somebody was a 65. And with feedback. I told you, I don't fail anybody. You only fail yourself. And I'm not a liar. Oh, okay. No, tell your friend no. Miss S doesn't give out 0s. You can ask Miss Peralta if she gives out 0s. I can't speak for Miss Peralta. I can only speak for myself. All right? But you can ask D6. I don't give out any 0s.